This is Sam Sorbo, and she is the wife of Kevin Sorbo. If you're unfamiliar, he's this super famous right-wing figure, best known for his role as Hercules. I think he was also on Babylon 5 back in the 90s or something like that. And more recently, he was in the movie God's Not Dead as the evil atheist professor who tried to force his students to sign a pledge saying that they don't believe in God or some other ridiculous nonsense. Anyway, this is his wife, Sam. She has a long history of saying bizarre stuff. She came out and said some other bizarre stuff pretty recently, so I just wanted to kind of go through her history of public appearances espousing strange positions about education and evolution and atheists, because in my mind, this is endlessly entertaining stuff. So let's take a look at this one. This is on Flashpoint. She made a public appearance on this TV show Flashpoint on the Victory Network, owned and operated by Kenneth Copeland. This is early May 2021. Check this out.
The greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world that he didn't exist, right? The greatest trick that the atheists ever played was to convince us that they don't believe in God. They do. They believe in God. They believe they are God. And guess what? They're a jealous God.
Okay, interesting. So you have an atheist right here. I'm telling you now, I don't believe in God. I don't believe that I am God. I don't believe any of that stuff. This is a strange way to frame this stuff. The greatest trick the devil ever played was to make people think he doesn't exist. That is such an odd way to view the world. If he is doing so little to affect the world that people don't think that he exists in the first place, then he might as well not exist at all, right? If you can't tell the difference between a world that looks like there's a God behind it and a world that doesn't, the God might as well not exist at all, seems to me.
They believe they are God. And guess what? They're a jealous God. That's why you can't go to church.
I don't know what that means, but okay. So that's Sam Sorbo. Now you have an idea of what we're dealing with. She went to the Reawaken America tour not too long ago. This one was early December 2021 is when she made her appearance here. It's a little bit quiet. Forgive me for that. I tried to amplify it. But she rails against public education in this. And I don't mean college. I mean K-12 schooling. Just normal school. Listen to this.
I pulled my son out of school in second grade because they weren't educating him. They were training him a little. It wasn't going well.
Okay, they weren't educating him. They were training him a little bit. She's filthy rich. She's a millionaire. She couldn't afford a private school? I mean, any public school is bound to follow certain rules, period. They are legally required to follow the curriculum that's been laid out by the state, I believe. And I don't know where they live. California, maybe? They have a pretty robust curriculum in California. Honestly, in every state. Like, there are some aspects of state education, like sex ed, for example, that I really don't like. I think it's terrible. But they'll still give you a well-rounded education for the most part. They'll make sure that you understand the basics of mathematics and things like that. Where was her son going that he was just being trained on certain things? Is that really what it was? Or did she just not like what he was being taught?
Well, and I started to question, what was the final result going to be? He was learning how to be a bully because, let's face it, in school, they teach you evolution. What is evolution? Survival of the fittest. And what is that? That's bullying.
No, to all of that. Okay, evolution is not survival of the fittest, first of all. Survival of the fittest is a phrase that boils down a single idea to the theory of evolution. Survival of the fittest, it isn't even accurate. I think the phrase was coined by Darwin himself, I'm not sure. We have learned so much since Darwin. Darwin was like the discoverer of the idea or whatever. We have blown past Darwin like 150 years ago. We blew past him. His ideas are basically irrelevant to the field at this point. It's like Sigmund Freud. He was the father of psychology. Just about everything that he came up with, every theory, every idea that he espoused has all been debunked at this point. It was nonsense, as it turns out. But he legitimized the field. Same with Darwin. He had no idea what he was talking about. We didn't even know what genetics was at the time. But he legitimized the field, and after looking into it further, we discovered that he was correct. He didn't know just how correct he was. Survival of the fittest was one phrase that I think Darwin used to boil down the idea of natural selection. It isn't even really an accurate phrase, survival of the fittest, to be perfectly honest. But, I'm just picking apart this one aspect to this thing she said. There was so much there that was wrong. I can't.
What is evolution? Survival of the fittest. And what is that? That's bullying. Christians have no business sending their children to public school.
This is deeply disturbing. This rhetoric, it's deeply disturbing to know that very public Christians are trying to separate themselves from the rest of society. On the other hand, I have to say, it would be nice if we didn't have these nutcases going into school boards trying to take them over and screaming about evolution being wrong and everything else. That would be cool. Just take your kid out if that's what it is. That doesn't really help those poor Christian kids who are being terribly abused by their parents, though. So, I don't know. It's kind of a catch-22, unfortunately. So that's who Sam Sorbo is. That's who we're dealing with. And it only gets crazier from there. This one was early December 2021. Check this out.
Education is the 3 F's: faith, family, and freedom. And there's only one way for them to get that, and that's to be with their parents. And so I'll say this. Evolution doesn't give a crap about equality. Evolution believes in inequality, okay? If you're teaching your child evolution, you're teaching them slavery and inequality. And now God is...
I feel like she's not even trying to make her claims make sense. She's just saying whatever she wants and propagandizing and making people deeply afraid of evolution any way she possibly can. Honestly, ridiculous.
And now God is calling the remnant to fight.
The remnant is a reference to a group of Christians that will eventually rise up and take over the world or whatever else.
And fight for what? For freedom, because Jesus Christ is the author of our freedom, and evolution has nothing to do with that.
Jesus is the author of our freedom. This is really the basis of a cult. This whole thing, that the group that she's a part of is a religious cult. I call them Witches for Jesus. Sometimes they call themselves non-denominational. Sometimes they call themselves Baptists. It just kind of depends on the group you're working with, but most of them have one specific belief in common. That is, they have a few specific beliefs in common, we'll say that. They don't accept evolution as the fact that it is. They believe that Noah's Ark is a real literal story. There's a story in the book of Exodus about Moses and Aaron, I think, going to Pharaoh and throwing their staffs on the ground and they turn to snakes. Pharaoh calls his wise men and sorcerers. They throw their staffs on the ground. They turn to snakes too. Moses and Aaron's snakes gobble up the other staff snakes. So the idea is these people believe that they're capable of just as much as witches are, who they call witches. It's just they're getting their power from God. Witches get it from Satan. So I call this denomination Witches for Jesus, generally. They are like a branch of evangelicalism that is as extreme as it gets, truthfully. And they will deny evolution to the death, even if it doesn't make sense.
Because Jesus Christ is the author of our freedom, and evolution has nothing to do with that.
You're right, it doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Why'd you even bring it up? Has nothing to do with anything. It's all about propagandizing and denying reality. She is a member of the group I would call Witches for Jesus. Absolutely nutty stuff. Interestingly enough, she went on this guy's program to talk to him about evolution. This one is recent, mid-July 2022. Check this out.
So let's go back. We know that the education system is broken. What are the sources of that? How did that happen? And when did it happen?
Okay, so there's a couple schools of thought.
Schools of thought. She's acting as though she has some legitimacy to speak on this academic subject as an authority. It's so deeply ridiculous. Sadly, people do view it that way, though.
Okay, so there's a couple schools of thought. It was on purpose. There were people at the helm who were driving it, Dewey and others, who were driving the education system and actually wanted to dumb down the populace. We borrowed from the Prussians. The Prussians instituted their quote-unquote education system in order to crank out good warriors. What's the one thing that you need from a warrior? Obedience. You don't want them to question the expert. You want them to just trust the expert. And that's where we are today, right? So that was probably over 100 years ago they started implementing that. And it progressed slowly.
Wow, that is crazy. That is absolutely unhinged, nutty stuff. She gets into more of that in a second. This problem is twofold with Sam Sorbo, okay? The first problem here is she's one of those people that believes that they're trying to, like, control you. They want to control your mind. They want to control every move you make, 1984 style. Really, really weird, unhinged stuff. But aside from that, Charlie Kirk is really famous for doing the exact strategy that she's doing here. And here's the strategy. Have you guys ever seen 8 Mile? I watched 8 Mile a long time ago. I was a big Eminem fan, like years and years ago when I was a kid. I wasn't supposed to listen to Eminem, so I listened to it constantly. Anyway, in the movie he made, 8 Mile, what he would do is when he was about to battle somebody in a rap battle, he would list all of the things that he knew somebody was going to come at him with. Like, he's going to say, I know I'm skinny, I know I'm white, I know I don't rhyme well, or whatever else. He just lists all of these things that he was really bad at. So when it was their turn, they had nothing to say. What are they going to say after he just said it all? It kind of takes the air right out of the balloon, doesn't it? When you list all of the things before they get a chance to. Charlie Kirk uses that exact strategy. And so is Sam Sorbo right here. That exact strategy. It's not really projection necessarily. I mean, it is projection, but psychological projection is the process of misinterpreting what is inside as coming from outside. It forms the basis of empathy by the projection of personal experiences to understand someone else's subjective world. So, an example would be a spouse is super, super suspicious that they're being cheated on. That could be an example of projection. When somebody cheats on their spouse, they suddenly get really, really suspicious of their spouse for cheating. They think that they're going to be cheated on. That's an example of projection. So Jim cheats on Jenny and now starts accusing Jenny of cheating on him constantly. That's an example of projection. That's not what we're seeing with Sam Sorbo and Charlie Kirk. That's not what we're watching happen. Charlie Kirk runs something called TPUSA. It's this big organization that goes to colleges, set up kind of like the Hitler Youth. In fact, it works nearly exactly like the Hitler Youth worked. I mean, sorry for the comparison. That's just what it is. In my opinion, I believe Charlie Kirk and Sam Sorbo know exactly what they're doing. It's not them feeling bad for something that they're doing and reflecting something that's inside onto the outside world. I believe they're taking these intentional steps to accuse the other side of things that they are knowingly doing and that they're aware that they're doing, so that when somebody comes back and points out that they're doing that, it falls flat. The accusation falls flat. That's who Sam Sorbo is fundamentally. She is a propagandist for the far right, and she's extremely influential. Check this one out. This one was mid-July 2022 also.
So 2 things, Sam Sorbo. 1, we are very glad that God has his own creation, and he creates like dangerous neon colors in nature to say stay away. We're glad that these teachers have colored themselves dangerous neon colors so that we know to keep our children away from them. We appreciate that. We're not trying to compliment the lib teachers. But secondly, how horrifying is this as a mom to watch this and say, like, this is the person who could be educating my child?
Who could be educating my child? Who are they talking about right now? What teachers are they talking about that have colorful hair who are like quote-unquote feminazis? Who are they talking about specifically? Because this is another strategy from the right. They love to make these caricatures of ridiculous people, maybe find a single person that acts like a Nutter Butter in the United States, and then claim that everybody is acting like this. Find somebody specific and apply it generally. That's how it works.
No, what's really horrifying is that a parent would actually submit their child to that kind of child abuse. And
What kind of child abuse, quote unquote? Just going to a public school? What? What are you talking about?
child abuse, and that's what that is. That's child abuse, and we really ought to stop mincing our words and call this what it is. And if anybody wants to take issue with me, they can go to samsorbo.com.
I'll pass.
And we can have a discussion there. But teaching children that there is no such thing as natural gender is absurd. It's a lie.
Who's doing this? Who is telling children there is no such thing as natural gender or any of this stuff? Who's telling 5-year-olds that they're actually a girl in a boy's body? Who is doing this? Name one example, please. One. I just want one example of this. This is not happening, certainly not on a systemic scale. No, but there are no classes dedicated to teaching children about transgenderism. It's not happening. It's fabricated. It is fabricated outrage.
But we've been teaching lies for many decades. We teach children that evolution is truth, even though it has yet to be proven.
It was proven decades ago. It is beyond a shadow of a doubt factual. Oh my God. Just every word out of her mouth is nonsense.
It's yet to be proven. We teach them that they are accidents of nature. They're just a collection of random molecules that happen to organize themselves into
No, nobody claims that.
That happen to organize themselves into a human being. And we don't even have a definition for human being anymore in our schools, much less the definition of a woman in the Supreme Court anymore. And
see, there's nothing but propaganda in her head. Nothing's there. Nothing. It's absolutely absurd. It's bottomless nonsense. So let me just break this down. Let's just step back a little bit and break it down one by one.
For human being anymore.
No definition for human being. What are you talking about? Of course there's a definition for human being. We all use the same definition of human being.
Our schools, much less the definition of a woman in the Supreme Court anymore.
Yeah, that was a reference to Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court hearing where they were trying to nominate her or whatever else. She was asked a bad faith question. What is a woman? Can you define woman? It's just a culture war issue. Nothing more, nothing less. They're just trying to fight a culture war. And she didn't want to take part in the culture war, so she said, I don't know, I'm not a biologist, look it up. I don't have a dictionary in front of me, basically. I was perfectly fine with that answer. An alternative answer, somebody suggested something like, a woman is a person who has traits traditionally associated with the female sex or something like that. I think that's an okay definition. I mean, there are a billion definitions out there. It varies heavily based on the context and the situation. But they don't care. If you give them an answer, a valid answer, they will move the goalpost back because it's a culture war issue, plain and simple.
And this is all lies, and it's child abuse to subject a child to those kind of lies. What's sad is that parents think that that is still a better choice than themselves just teaching the child how to be a human being.
You know the sad thing about this, what she says here, it sounds like just extreme rhetoric, right? Listen to this again.
Lies, and it's child abuse to subject a child to those kind of lies.
You know, that may sound like just basic rhetoric, like not a big deal, whatever, she's a nutcase, but let's move on. But that is exactly what Governor Abbott did to the trans community. If somebody under the age of 18 receives trans-affirming care, their parents are investigated for child abuse. That's what he did. He signed an executive order to put that into practice. So using the term child abuse is a deeply disturbing road to walk down. You can define anything you want as child abuse. And that's exactly what Abbott is doing right now. So that's Sam Sorbo. She came out with a recent clip. This one is from late July 2022, where she's still railing against education. Listen to this.
Why the rebranding?
So the first thing that you learn in school is you have to raise your hand to ask a question. That's a deterrent. That's actually teaching you viscerally, because you embody it, don't ask. That actually eventually becomes trust the expert. That's not education. That's not a thinking person. That's a non-thinking person. That's what the schools are turning out. That's what school produces.
The greatest trick.
Wow, that's fascinating. So she isn't stopping at think for yourself and research for yourself. She's saying do not trust the experts. That's what I'm hearing. Am I hearing incorrectly? Don't trust the experts. Going to a school teaches you to trust experts, and we shouldn't be. But even more interesting is the pop psychology, or the armchair psychology, that she's taking part in right now. Listen again.
You have to raise your hand to ask a question. That's a deterrent. That's actually teaching you viscerally, because you embody it. Don't ask.
No, it isn't. It's keeping order in the classroom. I guess she's saying she would rather students just scream out their question anytime they have one. Actually, I think she prefers students just don't ask questions. I think she prefers that they get online and look it up for themselves. Any age, 3, 4, 5 years old. Because asking a question of anybody is deferring to an expert, and you're not supposed to do that. That's absolutely unhinged. Absolutely unhinged, dude. What do you do with this? Her mind is so deep in a gutter. I can't even figure out, like, what's going through her head at this point. I can't match up with her and put myself in that headspace, because she is so far gone at this point. Okay, I was just pulling up the twit because I wanted to go to Kevin Sorbo's Twitter account, but I just came across, I follow Ron Filipkowski. He's a great dude. Really like this guy. The first video that's up here, it's unrelated, but the title of this, like the tweet, says, Trump calls swimmer Riley Gaines up on stage and tries to give her a kiss. She flinches and pulls away. Uh-oh.
Crazy. It was the largest applause I've ever heard. Come on up here. Look at this. Look at this. Crazy. It was the
Ouch. Ooh. Rejected. That's painful. We're here for Kevin Sorbo. Let's just keep looking. Oh, no, I didn't mean to follow him. Ew. Just meant to look. Okay. I just like it. This is a picture of him, by the way, if you weren't sure who I was talking about earlier. This is Kevin Sorbo. I'm sure you'll recognize him from stuff. He's extremely controversial. He's constantly saying ridiculous stuff. This is Sam Sorbo's husband. They think alike, to say the least. So you can attack and bully people over not wearing a mask for COVID, but not for spreading monkeypox? Makes sense. Okay, I don't even understand. Monkeypox isn't spread the same way as COVID, first of all. There's just so much wrong with this. I think the FBI should add themselves to the FBI watch list. Oh, he hates the FBI. Oh, my God. Oh, God. Okay, let's just... Oh, look, this is Sam and Kevin together.
Is this the beginning of something?
Okay, let's just step back and watch the beginning of this. This guy on the left, Gorka is his name, I don't remember his full name. Gorka's his last name. He was involved in the ridiculous 2000 Mules movie. Let's just watch this one.
How uphill a struggle this is. Gina, the Daily Wire, yourself, you're fighting it. Is this the beginning of something exciting, or how much of a Herculean task is this?
Oh, such a clever joke, because he played Hercules on that TV show back in the 90s or the 80s or whatever. Look, they're both laughing at that. That was so funny.
I think it is the beginning of something exciting. And by the way, I played the title role in that movie. I am the terror on the prairie. Yeah, I mean, we had a great time making that movie. And as always with movies like this,
I'm not sure what movie this is referencing. What is this referencing? Sunday night on the Gorka Reality Check. Hollywood hates America. Tune in Sunday on... Oh, this is on Newsmax, apparently? Okay, let's skip forward, see if we can find a part where they're talking. Oh, this is a picture of him in Hercules, like from the TV show. Oh, it's lagging. I'm getting the circle of death. Uh-oh. Okay, well, anyway, if that's Sam Sorbo, that's Kevin Sorbo. They're both ridiculous and far-right extremist conspiracy theorists to the core, to the bottom of their black little hearts, sadly. We got to call this stuff out when we see it, man. We got to call it out when we see it. I think this woman's a true believer, by the way. If you disagree with me on that point, let me know in the comments or on Twitter @TelltaleAtheist.